The Mana disaster is the most pivotal event of Mushoku Tensei's first season, and effectively changes the entire course of the lives of all those who were caught up in it. What was and may have been is forever altered, as is the course of the series as presented to us, the audience. That is, the narrative lines we thought the plot was following take a drastic turn. The event, while spectacular in scope and display, is initially presented to us as something relatively benign. Rudeus, Eris, and we can assume Ghislaine are simply teleported to another part of the world. They wake up and, other than being halfway across the globe, are unharmed. The scope of the journey they must undertake to get home is daunting and extremely challenging, but isn't too bad, right? Wrong. The author does a clever job of hiding from us initially just how terrible this event was. Does a masterful job of disguising from us just how much of a tragedy this calamity really was. It would take years for Rudeus, Eris, and Roger to discover the true scope of the ruin and destruction that this singular event had left in its wake. Mana disaster. Mana Calamity. There's never been a more fitting name. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Now, as I've stated in the intro, the Mana Calamity and the scope of its destruction really is deceptive in how it's presented to us by the author. Let's give that some context. It's a clever narrative choice because, on the surface, it really appears to be your typical call to action event that moves our characters from a place of relative comfort to a place where an adventure, a journey, is now necessary. We see this all the time in fiction of all sorts. It's your standard character arc. These journeys and adventures are what will force the characters involved in them to grow and develop. What makes it so jarring initially is the stark contrast we're presented with. Remember, in the episode right before it, we're presented with an emotional high. The Boreas Grey Rat family puts on a heartfelt birthday celebration for Rudeus that really demonstrates how loved and appreciated he is by the entire family and the staff working at the estate. Even Eris's mother, who, until this point, has been rather cold and distant to Rudeus, accepts and declares her affection for him in a hilarious manner.
Rudeus! あなたはもううちの子よ!
あれこの人、俺のこと嫌ってたんじゃなかったっけ?
He's presented with his staff, a kingly gift, and all seems well. Events are progressing at a steady and positive pace. Until boom, they're not. The Mana disaster that has been brewing finally manifests, and Rudeus and Eris find themselves transported to the demon continent. At this point, what was and may have been has taken a drastic turn, but we aren't aware of just how drastic. Since Rudy and Eris are unharmed, it's easy to assume that everyone else is as well. The author banks on this, which is why it's such a fantastic narrative decision. We as an audience have a tendency to draw conclusions based on the information we're presented with. It's natural. Even if you question what happened to everyone else initially, you are quickly caught up in the humor and challenges that their return journey presents them. It isn't until the trio reach the Miller's continent and Rudeus is reunited with Paul that the terrible truth that's been lurking under the surface reveals itself. The Mana disaster was just that, a disaster. We're given a glimpse of the political ramifications when Saul Greyrat, a character we've come to love, is held responsible for an event completely out of his control and is executed. This is the first hint we're given that the fallout from the incident may be more sinister than what we've been led to believe initially. Once Paul and Rudeus are able to speak, we learn the true scope. Thousands are dead or missing. Zenith, Aisha, Lilia, and Sylphie are missing. Furthermore, we learn that hundreds, if not thousands, of Fittoan residents were abducted and trafficked into slavery after their teleportation. Paul's had to form what is essentially a mercenary organization dedicated to locating and freeing enslaved Fittoans by any means necessary. From there, the bad news ball gets rolling, and every revelation regarding the incident is worse than the last. We're shown Lily and Aisha's teleportation and learn that they've been held hostage. This scene reveals more than you think about the nature of the teleportation than we realize as well. We'll come back to that. When the trio finally make their way back to Buena Village, we see that the town has been wiped off the map. When Eris and Rudy finally make it back to Roa and are reunited with Ghislaine, we learn another tragic detail. Eris's parents are both dead as a result of their teleportation. At this point, clues regarding the indiscriminate nature of the teleportation and how disastrous it was begin to come together if you're paying attention. Some people were teleported to relatively safe and or benign locations. Paul and Norn, for example, ended up in a field far from Buena Village, but are otherwise fine. However, many more ended up in extremely dangerous situations. Elaine, Philip, and Hilda, Eris's parents, were transported to an extremely dangerous war zone. Eris's parents were murdered by the inhabitants of that area, and by the time Ghislaine locates them, all that's left are their bodies. Ghislaine, being a Sword King level swordsman and an S-Rank adventurer, is the only reason she's able to successfully make it out of that situation. She had the skills necessary to ensure her survival. Most people caught up in this incident wouldn't have possessed anywhere near that level of combat ability. Most people who found themselves in that situation died. We haven't reached this point in the anime yet, but later on in the story, when we're reintroduced to Sylphie, we learn that she was transported thousands of feet in the air, and only her skill with magic allowed her to survive the fall, with both of her legs broken. Once again, how many average Fittoan residents possess that level of magic ability and skill? Not many. Most who found themselves teleported in that manner died. Let's circle back to Lilia and Aisha's teleportation. When Lilia comes to, she finds her and Aisha deep underwater. She has to swim to the surface carrying an unconscious Aisha. But what if you couldn't swim? You drown. What if you can swim, but you're unconscious for an extended amount of time after your arrival, like Rudy and Eris were? You drown. What if, like Eris and Rudy, you're transported to an inhospitable location with nothing but the clothes on your back? But, unlike Eris and Rudy, you possess no skills with magic, no skill with the sword, and don't have a very helpful, not to mention powerful Superb willing to assist you. No food, no water, and no idea where you are, maybe hundreds of miles from the nearest settlement, and that's assuming that settlement would be friendly. No skills in living off the land if that land even has resources available to you, you die. Plain and simple. We can speculate on and theorize on situation after situation that occurred as a result of the disaster, and the conclusion is always the same. Those caught up in the Mana Calamity were truly at the mercy of the circumstances they found themselves in after arriving at their destination. Barring the individual arriving at a relatively safe location, close to a friendly civilization, unless you possess some sort of combat skill, magic ability, or adventuring experience, you died. Or in the case of many Fittoans, were trafficked with little hope of rescue. With the Mana disaster, Refuge in the author reaches almost Game of Thrones level ruthlessness with the characters in a manner that really does add a sense of gravitas to the story. I'm really reminded of the Red Wedding in some ways. And while those we could consider main characters or those tied to the main character in Rudeus aren't killed off, i.e. his immediate family, many side characters we like, side characters who had seemed integral to the story, are. Eris' parents are killed off. Eris' grandfather is killed off. Sylphie's parents, though they aren't shown much, are killed off. Truly, the Mana Calamity is a tragic event that was very deceptive and clever in how it was presented to us. Simply put, that thing was bad, man. Really bad. Truly an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove narrative-wise. But now I want to hear from all of you. What are your thoughts on the fallout from the Mana disaster? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Remember to like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. I'll catch you on the next one.